Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of The Awesome with Cody. As usual, I'm your host, Cody, and today we are continuing April's theme of awesome sci-fi movies. Or awesome hardcore sci-fi movies? I don't remember exactly what I called it. But anyways, they're sci-fi movies. And they're dope. So today's episode is about Source Code. This is a 2011 movie. Came out it was released on April 1st, which is weird. But South by Southwest first. Anyways, movie is directed by Duncan Jones, is written by Ben Ripley. Duncan Jones I've talked about before, actually last month when I talked about Moon. He is the son of David Bowie and Angela Bowie. Angie Bowie. He is British, as I've mentioned before. Movie-wise, a movie I talked about last week was Moon, which I wanted to talk about Source Code at one point, and it just happened to be I found a bunch of sci-fi movies that I wanted to talk about, and boom, here we are. He also did Warcraft and Mute and something called Rogue Trooper that'll be out sometime. I don't know. But so far he's done a bunch of shit. That's awesome. He did do the story for Moon, and then it was written by someone else. Can't remember. I talked about it then, but he did not write this one. But it is super dope. Ben Ripley, the writer of this, has done a few things. Not a lot of good things. So the things he's done, obviously Source Code. Before that, he did Species 3 and Species The Awakening, which was a reboot of that, I believe. I can't remember if that was right or not. The Watch was a TV movie from somewhere. I can't remember what it was. Canada. I've never seen it. I'm just reading the link I have here for it. That's not the right button. I hit the wrong button. Boy Choir, another movie I've never seen. Dustin Hoffman's in it. Kathy Bates. Sure, why not? Flatliners, the remake. Is it technically it's a remake. Some people will say it's not because of Kiefer Sutherland being in it, but he plays a different character. It's hard to really say. It's actually a very interesting remake. And I'm not talking about this week, but eventually maybe. It's not awesome though, so I don't know if it really falls into this one. He plays Dr. Barry Wolfson, who is the older version of the character he played in the original, by the name of Nelson Wright. We're not talking about that movie. Anyways, so he wrote that as well, and that's the last thing he did. That's all that Ben Ripley did. The movie stars mainly 4 people. There are a ton of people in it. But your main 4 cast are Jake Gyllenhaal, who plays Captain Coulter Stevens, Michelle Monaghan, who plays Christina Warren, Vera Farmiga, I think is how you say her name, Captain Colleen Goodwin, and Jeffrey Wright, Dr. Rutledge, as well as some other people you may know. Russell Peters plays a comedian, which is really funny because he is one. And then one of my favorite things about it, which is going to come to when I start to describe the movie, makes me laugh, but Scott Bakula is the voice of Donald Stevens, who is Coulter's father. Voice cameo only, nothing on screen. And the reason that's funny is because the way I describe this movie is it's Quantum Leap and Groundhog's Day mashed together. So if those two got in a room together and they went bow chicka bow wow, they had a baby, that baby would be Source Code. And if you don't know what Quantum Leap is, and you don't know what Groundhog's Day is, Ooh, we are not friends. Anyhow, Scott Bakula was in a TV show called Quantum Leap, where he played a character who, a scientist who went back in time, in a way, in place into other people's bodies to help right wrongs, and then hopefully find his way back home because of the accident that caused him to go, Quantum Leap. And then Groundhog's Day, for the people who don't know, is a comedy by, or not by, but by Harold Ramis, but starring Bill Murray, where he is stuck in the same day, which is Groundhog's Day, until he figures something out. I don't think I've talked about that movie on this podcast that I can remember. Did I talk about Groundhog's Day at all? I will eventually, because it's one of my favorites. Maybe I'll do a Bill Murray month. Anyhow, Groundhog's Day is amazing. There's some really weird fan theory I'll talk about at that time, but that's another day. Anyways, before I go into the movie, and I will spoil it, it is 9 years old, so you can go fuck yourselves. Jake Gyllenhaal, we all know who Jake Gyllenhaal is. He's been in so many things. He's really good. I think he's a very underrated actor, if you ask me. He gets shit on a lot, which is weird, but whatever. He's an amazing actor. Well known for Brokeback Mountain, more recently Spider-Man, the newest one, Far From Home. If you haven't seen, so there's a handful of movies that you should watch that have him in it. There's Nightcrawler, fucked up ending, amazing movie. There's, End of Watch is pretty phenomenal too. You should watch that one as well. This movie, Source Code, because he's fantastic in it. Prisoners, goddamn amazing movie. Nocturnal Animals is a good one too, but that's not the one I was thinking of. Demolition, that's a really good one. I think that's really the ones. Yeah, for sure. I mean, he's done a lot of good things. He was amazing in Jarhead. He was amazing in Zodiac. He was really good in Bubble Boy, one of the greatest movies of all time. But anyways, that's Jake Gyllenhaal. You all know who he is. He's awesome. Michelle Monaghan has been in a bunch of stuff, most notably recently Mission Impossible 3, Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol, and Mission Impossible Fallout. She's awesome. She was in the first season of True Detective. Fantastic first season, not so great following seasons. First half of the second season was good, but then it kind of fell apart in weird ways. And I never watched the third one, so maybe I should watch that. But she's also in a show called The Path. I believe that was on Hulu. Yes, that was really good too. She was in Gone Baby Gone, which is a fantastic movie. She plays the lead in that, the female lead in that. I guess I can ruin that movie, but she's the bad guy in it. Obviously, she's in Source Code. What's her other big one that you would know her, that people would know her from? She was in Eagle Eye. The movie was cool too, but whatever. Most recently, she's in the remake of The Craft, which I thought was pretty weird. Her most recent one was Fallout, Mission Impossible Fallout, and something called Saint Judy, which I don't know what it is, but anyhow, that's Michelle Monaghan. She's pretty good. I like her a lot, except for in Gone Baby Gone. I hated her, but that was the point. Vera Farmiga. I'm not too sure how to say her last name. She's been in like the Conjuring movies, like all 90 of them. She was in the movie Orphan. Does anyone remember that movie? The movie's fucked up. I hit the wrong button. That's all right. What's the little girl's not a little girl, and she tries to like seduce her adoptive dad. Movie's fucked up. Anyhow, she's in that. She was in. She plays Norma Bates in Bates Motel, the TV program with that one kid who's in Charlie and Chocolate Factory. Can't think of his name right now. Something more. Anyways, I'm not talking about him. But most notably, she's in the Conjuring movies. And Annabelle Come Home. She does a lot of horror. Stuff. But she's really good. I like her a lot. I like her in pretty much everything I've seen her in, including the 2 Conjuring movies I've seen. Is it 2 I've seen? 1 and 2? Or 1 and 3? I don't remember which ones I've actually seen of hers. She's done a lot of movies. There was something bigger she was in, too, besides the Conjuring movies, because she's in Departed, but more recently. Oh, Godzilla. Godzilla, King of the Monsters. She was in that one. She was in Captive State. I still want to see that. The movie looks fucked up. Oh, she was in that one, huh? Okay, sorry, I'm reading stuff. So she was in the newest Godzilla movie. She played, air quotes, the bad guy. I don't know if that's a great way to say it, but anyhow, that's Vera Farmiga. Man, I can't talk today. Then last and not least at all is a gentleman I adore in every movie I've seen him in, which is Jeffrey Wright. Television programs as well, because he's really good in Westworld, and he was really good in Boardwalk Empire. He's in No Time to Die? Wait, what? Oh, yeah, of course, Felix. Of course, he plays Felix in that one again. That's good to know he's in that one. Did I see him in the trailer? Felix Leiter. Anyhow, he's in the James Bond movies, the newer ones with Daniel Craig. He plays Felix, the American CIA agent. But Jeffrey Wright, he's phenomenal in everything I've ever seen him in. And I've seen him in a lot of stuff. Most notably, you'll know him from Westworld. He plays Bernard Lowe. Who's a very big role in that television program. Like I said, otherwise you would know him from Boardwalk Empire. He was in that one. He was in he's been in a lot of stuff. Angels in America was a really good one. He was in an episode of House, apparently. That's cool. And he's going to be in the new Batman movie. He plays James Gordon, which is pretty cool because they didn't typecast him as the only black character everyone thinks about is Lucius Fox. That's cool. I like him a lot in that role. He also could have been a really good Alfred Pennyworth, too, but I think they went with a slightly younger actor. Is that right? Who'd they go with for that one? I'm off topic again, but whatever. Who'd they get for Alfred again? It's what's his face, right? Andy Serkis, right? Yeah, Andy Serkis. I guess they could have had him be. He could have been Alfred as well, since Andy Serkis isn't exactly spring chicken, as some would say. Age wise, Andy Serkis is 55. Jeffrey Wright is the ripe old age of 54. See, he could have been Alfred as well. Anyways, but I think he's going to be James Gordon, whatever you want to call him. But the Batman, that's for another day or a different podcast, depending on if you've ever listened to the main podcast. Anyways, back to the movie, Source Code. So this is, I'm going to give you the short of it because there's a lot to it to understand and deal with. So in it, Jake Gyllenhaal's character, he plays his Captain Coulter Stevens, who is a helicopter pilot who was on a mission in Afghanistan, and then he woke up on a train, a Metra commuter train in Chicago, headed toward Chicago, and he's very disoriented. Anyhow, long and short of the movie, the source code is a 8-minute block of time where compatible brain waves can jump into another person after they have died. There's this little window, 8 minutes, that they can capture after a human dies that allows them to inject a compatible person into that time. And when that time, he lives out the life of that person in those 8 minutes. Normally, this happens, as it's explained, is right after death of somebody. The only problem with this is that you see, now mind you, there's a lot to it. I don't want to, say this. It's not a plot hole. It's just something that's not fully explored in the movie. But the collective memories that last this 8 minutes, how did they get them? That's my question. But it's not explained in the movie. Anyway, it's like I said, it's not a plot hole. It's just something they don't explain. That's how pseudoscience works in movies and comic books and books and things like that. Unless you're Michael Crichton and then you make shit up that makes your pseudoscience exist. Plus, you just cram on a shit ton of other real science. Has anyone ever read Sphere? The book was mind-boggling. It was really good, don't get me wrong. Not what I ever expected. But it's, I have to go back and watch the movie because I'm pretty sure the movie did not do that book justice whatsoever. Excuse me. I'm sorry, I had a cough. My throat was dry. All my yammering. So the whole premise of this movie is these 8 minutes that allows Jake Gyllenhaal's character, Captain Coulter Stevens, to go back and live these 8 minutes. This whole thing is he is basically being sent into this source code to figure out who the bomber is, to stop a further attack, because they believe through intel they've received that Chicago is going to be the site of a major attack. This was a test of their bombs or whatever it is, but they believe that Chicago's next, and they need to figure out who did this to try to figure out who's going to plan the next one. So, the whole thing about this is this 8 minutes, they keep telling him that he can't change anything. He, no matter what he does, at the end of 8 minutes, the Sean Fentress, who's the person he's embodying, he will. It ends. He dies no matter what. Early on, I forgot. Sorry. So where it comes into the whole quantum leap thing and the Groundhog's Day thing is this: quantum leap, he jumps into another person's body, full on it's all his memories, and he's there. He has to figure things out. Unlike Scott Bakula's character in Quantum Leap, he doesn't have Al, his computer assistant, to help him remember details. He has to figure it out for himself, which is very frustrating. Anyhow, for him, not for me. I was watching the movie, so it wasn't that bad for me at all. But the whole thing with Groundhog's Day is it's the same 8 minutes from the same exact point. So in Groundhog's Day, 6 a.m. Eastern, in Puxatawny, Pennsylvania, Phil wakes up and he relives the same day. Soon as he dies or as soon as he goes to sleep, he wakes up at 6 a.m. again. This movie, Steven, Coulter Stevens, so Stevens, gets sent back into the 8 minutes after he dies. And it doesn't matter where he died or how he died, and I'll explain that in a minute why I'm talking about this. But he goes back. He gets sent back. He's in this capsule, and they initiate the source code again, throwing him back into those 8 minutes where he has to then continue. He remembers everything going on, but he has to continue to figure out what exactly is going on, who's doing it, and why. I guess, and how. And so, so that's the quantum leap portion, is he's going into someone else, full body and mind into somebody else, or into full mind into someone else's body, and takes over their body completely. The Groundhog's Day part, it's the same 8 minutes over and over again. So there's a lot of repetitiveness. He knows exactly. He starts to memorize what's happening. Who's doing what, who's going where, who's sitting where, things like that. Then he starts to fuck with shit. He's doing all sorts of stuff. The part that you get a little hint on what's happening that's not exactly true, spoilers, is he gets Christina to leave the train with him before the bomb goes off. And he thinks he figures out who's doing it, and he's incorrect. The bomb still goes off. So, he thinks he saved her. As soon as he wakes back up in the capsule again, he tries to tell Goodwin, the person interacting with him, that he saved her. Well, they look it up. She died on the train. So he's like, I bet I got her off. They're like, no, it's hard to say. You didn't. That's not how that works. The source code cannot be changed. You were just interacting within it because it's the person's memories, collective memories. You're just there to interact with them, which you start to realize that can't be true because he's changing what happens in it. But as soon as he starts to, you'd think it's like butterfly effect type thing, right? As soon as he starts to alter anything, he would change what's going on, like going forward, right? Whatever. So he keeps going back in, trying to change little things, trying to figure out who this is. Then every time he wakes up, the capsule he's in has weird things. Like one of them, there's a hydraulic leak in it. Another one, there's it's freezing. The power supply went out, so the life support starts to go down. Things like that. Anyhow, he keeps talking to Goodwin, trying to figure out where he is, what happened, because last time he remembers he was in Afghanistan on a mission, and all he wants to do is let his dad know. He wants to contact his dad, say he's stateside, and they're not telling him anything. Then he figures out that he's dead because when he's in the source code, he tries to figure out some stuff about himself, and he has Christina, who's played by Michelle Monaghan, look him up. She lets him know that he died, that Coulter died 2 months ago in a crash in Afghanistan. This breaks the source code, and he falters and falls out of it. Goes back in, and he keeps trying to change stuff. Eventually, he identifies the terrorist named Derek Frost. So, Stevens memorizes Frost's license plate and vehicle registration plates. However, he's unable to stop the train explosion. Outside source code, he relays his knowledge to Goodwin, which helps the police arrest Frost and prevents the second attack on Chicago. Stevens is congratulated for completing his mission. Rutledge, played by Jeffrey Wright, secretly reneges on his deal to let Stevens die, because Steven finds out that he's just essentially a functioning brain and that he never have a real life. So he reneges on this deal and not to let him die, as he's the only candidate that can enter source code at any moment. So two lies on top of each other. One is, at one point, Rutledge tells Stevens that he's compatible with Sean, Well, the truth is, he's the only compatible with the source code, not just Sean's source code, but source code in general. So, at the moment, I should say. So then, sympathetic to his plight, Goodwin sends Steven back one last time and promises to disconnect his life support after 8 minutes. This time, he sets a date with Christina, defuses the bomb, handcuffs Frost, and reports him to the police. He calls his father under the guise of a fellow soldier and reconciles with him and sends Goodwin a message. After 8 minutes, Goodwin terminates Steven's life support. As the world around him progresses beyond 8 minutes, Steven confirms his suspicion that source code is not a simulation, but a gateway. I'm reading this, by the way, if I don't sound like fucking super smart. It's not a simulation, but it's a gateway to alternate realities. He and Christina leave the train and go on a date. In the same reality, Goodwin receives Steven's message. He tells her the source code's true capability and asks her to help the alternate reality version of him. That's how the movie ends. Could add a sequel. Made plenty of money. Well, I mean, I don't know. It made $147 million at the box office versus the $31.9 million. That's a very specific number. Budget. So it made more than $100 million in gross money just in box office. It was very favorably reviewed too, if I'm mistaken. It had a 92% on Rotten Tomatoes, which again I don't go by ratings, and that's a whole fucking nightmare. But it was like 7.5 on critics and like a 74 on Metacritic. So that's pretty good. Yeah, so there was another movie which I talked about on this podcast called Deja Vu, starring Denzel Washington. Very similar, but that one's actually technically has time travel in it. You could say. We don't really know. They don't really specify it in that one, but it feels more like time travel than this one where it's alternate realities. Anyhow, that's that. But yeah, that's it for this week's episode, everybody. Talking about Source Code. I highly recommend watching it. I own it digitally as well as I own Blu-ray, I think, which is how I got the digital. Or I bought it again on iTunes. I'm not too sure. Anyhow, you should check it out if you have access to it. Or if you want to rent it, it's I'm sure it's rentable on iTunes for like $4 or $5 or something. I think most of them are $3.99, $4.99 if I'm not mistaken. Anyhow, check it out. Let me know in the comments on here. Send me an email. Hit us up on Facebook or Twitter or on the website, whatever you want to do. Let me know what you thought of it or any other movies that I've talked about on here. And then, tune in next week when I talk about Battle Los Angeles. That one's a super hardcore sci-fi movie as well. Hence the reason I called this month Awesome Hardcore Sci-fi Movies, I think is what it is. Anyhow, check it out. That's it for this week's episode, everybody. Again, I've been Cody. I'm your host. See you next week. Same talk time, same talk podcast. And as usual, at the end of this, I always like to say, let's be awesome.